Well, hello there. A little bit of a glitch there, but hello from the Granite State. And my name is Gary, and this is the What's My Role Now podcast. Thank you for joining us tonight. This podcast is simulcast through Facebook Live, through my Restoring Main Street page. And at some point, it looks like YouTube, for some reason, has messed up yet again. So I got to figure out what the glitch is there. I apologize for that. Unfortunately, doing these things live, sometimes you can't get those particular hiccups squared away ahead of time. So I guess we will only be on Facebook Live tonight, and I will attempt to square away the YouTube situation for the next podcast. So I apologize to everyone out there with that. You can also find Restoring Main Street. We have an Instagram and a Twitter account, so you can find us there as well. So I encourage you to follow us on all forms of social media, and please share this podcast. That's the way we get the word out with what we're doing, and also our guests get a much larger audience that way. So please share. I appreciate that. So tonight's topic, we will be discussing something that has both a national and a local platform, and one that tends to draw plenty of opinions, and that is the Native American imagery in sports today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of start with some background and start at the national level. There is probably no other franchise in recent memory that has garnered more interest or more media attention than that of the NFL's Washington Redskins. For years, they have been, or groups have sought to see about the Redskins changing their name. If I can give you just a quick background on the Redskins, it seems that back in 1932, they weren't known as the Redskins. They were the Boston Braves at the time. And at that time, they were owned by George Preston Marshall. And it seems that they had plans in 1933 to be playing that upcoming season at Fenway Park instead of their own Braves field. So owner Marshall, George Marshall, obviously saw some type of a conflict there, understanding that back in 1932 and 33, the Major League Boston Braves were still in town, had not left for Atlanta yet. So there was an obvious name change that needed to be named, but they needed to happen. Excuse me there, but they wanted to keep the same imagery and logo for the team. So that was a definite consideration. Along with combined at that time, they were looking to make a coaching change, and they were bringing on a Native American coach, William Lone Star Diaz, who was of the Sioux Nation. And with those two events kind of happening at the same time, it just made sense to, like I said, wanted to keep the image of the team, and in keeping with the new coach, who was actually a very accomplished footballer. He was actually a teammate of Jim Thorpe at the Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania. So William Diaz was actually very well known, as well as Jim Thorpe. So when you combine those two, that's kind of the honest background behind the original name change for the Washington Redskins, now the Washington football team, until they can decide on a more permanent name. So when you take that from a national platform like the NFL, I wanted to bring it to something more local, something that more hits home here. Anybody that lives in the area knows about the suggested name change, I think, in Rochester for the Spalding High School athletic teams. Spalding has always been known, well, not always been known, but since the 1950s has been known as the Spalding Red Raiders. And this is not the first time that a name change or request of a name change has come up. In my research, if you go back to 2006, let me see here if I don't lose myself in my notes. Yes. That was the first article that I found from the Foster's Daily Democrat looking for a name change in April 12th of 2006. And at that particular time, some of the administration did take and do some research. They got in touch with the Rochester Historical Society and just did a little bit of digging on the background of the Red Raider name. And it seems that the first time that this was noted was in the 1920s, and it was actually tied to the high school's literary magazine, which was the Red and White at the time. And then you didn't see anything historically or any change or reference to Native American name or the Red Raider name until it surfaced in the 1950s, and at that point became something more permanent. Now, there have been, like I said, there have been plenty of attempts or over the last few years to actually change it. Many in that back in 2015, there was a similar attempt to change the name, along with the present day article that was written recently, again requesting the change for the Red Raider name. Now, as far as I can see, evidentially on a national level, there's been several polls taken in the Native American population in America over the years. And a majority of those polls, from what I've read, come back with Native Americans not having a huge issue with the use of their imagery or names for franchises and sports teams. I believe they see it as some of us do as point of honor and actually holding them up in reverence. It's not anything derogatory, or as people are claiming that are pushing for these changes, somehow it's being derogatory or racist or disrespectful. So from what I could see, like I said, locally, all of those measures dating back to 2006, 2015 were actually all defeated at the time. There were public hearings held through the school board, and both sides were able to show up and make their voice heard. Back in, pardon me while I shuffle through my notes. Back in 2006, there was actually of the United Native American Cultural Center, Chief Roland Jerome had attended that particular meeting back in 2006. And at the time, he voiced the opinion that he didn't say anything that was disrespectful in the way Spalding had conducted themselves, the way that the team or the imagery that was involved. And he seemed to be okay with that back in 2006. Now, more recently here in 2020, back in July 15th of this year, like I said, the question of changing the name has come up once again, and it was another Foster's article that was posted. And to be fair, like I said, I've been in contact with some of the local divisions or groups of the Abenaki Nation. And in this particular article, July 15th of this year, Paul Pouliot and his wife Denise, Paul being the maven and president of the Kawasuk Band of Pennacook Abenaki people, he and his wife have taken up the side of looking for the name change, and contacting some other individuals. I did get in touch with the United Native American Cultural Center once again this year, just to see what their opinion was about the subject. And unfortunately, I did learn that Chief Jerome passed away in January of this year. So we're very sorry to hear that, and our sympathies go out to him, his family, friends, and the Abenaki Nation as well. But because they see this as a highly controversial subject right now, and no one really has taken the place of Chief Jerome at the moment, they kind of declined comment. So did my best to see if I could, like I said, find some representation of the actual local Native Americans. And we are very fortunate tonight, actually, or I am very fortunate tonight. I view myself as being very fortunate to have Chief Paul Bunnell here of the Kawasuk traditional band of the Sovereign Abenaki Nation. And he's going to join us tonight, and we're going to have at least the discussion about this particular topic and get his take on this. But before I dive into that, I certainly want to take just one moment and give you a little bit of Chief Paul's background, because it's quite extensive here. So bear with me as I read through this. Chief Paul is for over 43 years has over 43 years experience in genealogy research with a focus on Loyalists and Métis studies. He has an associate's degree accredited in genealogy through BYU, and also awarded an accreditation and fellowship of the American College of Genealogists, certified registered member of the United Empire of Loyalists Association of Canada, and the Hereditary Order of Descendants of the Loyalists and Patriots of the American Revolution, Washington, D.C. Chief Paul has been actually chief of this particular band of the Abenaki Nation since 2011. And in a discussion that we had a week or two ago, he let me know that during a recent online feast that they attempted to have, like most of us using Zoom and those type of things to gather, that he was elected for another 7 years as chief. So not only that, he has authored 30 different books on Loyalists and Métis genealogy, contributed to the Loyalist Research for TV program, History Detectives, Who Do You Think You Are? Also the founding member of the Falmouth Genealogy Society down on Cape Cod. So I could read on, and this is quite a page, but rather than have me continue on with this and hopefully not embarrass my guest in any way, I am going to shift over, if I can shuffle through and actually find my questions. And we are going to go ahead and add Chief Paul at this point, just to get his opinion and take on this, like I said, very sensitive subject. So. Hello there. There we are. Okay. It took a second. Like I said, the technology sometimes is quick, sometimes there's a delay. But there you are. How are you this evening, Chief Paul?
Good. Thank you, Gary, for inviting me here.
No, I thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this is like I said, a rather sensitive subject. So I certainly want a representation of a member of one of the local tribes to just have this discussion. I thought it was important. So now I'm going to make you do this again because I don't want to mess it up. Can you, just for the sake of knowing your Indian name, can you just pronounce that for me once so that the audience can hear that as well?
It's Gwilawato, and it means he searches for something. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, yeah. Actually, in thinking of a majority of your studies, and that kind of makes perfect sense. Just as a point of reference, can you explain just a little bit of your extensive background as far as the genealogy and the Métis studies, what exactly that entails, just so people can get an idea of your background beyond me just reading down through a list of accomplishments.
Well, the Métis is a mixed blood in the Indian world, and it's a description that comes out of Canada, really. So it's the mix between mostly French and Indian, but the meaning is mixed blood, so it could be a mix of, anybody really, but it's used in the native world, for that. And
Right.
I just went through all of our records and found a lot of different things that came out where a lot of the French women had no last names, so they were suspect of where they came from. So after a few years of researching, right, I kept finding more and more, and then the Indian names started to pop out. So a lot of times when you're doing research, if you have a woman with no last name and it's in the French, Canadian, or Acadian areas, they sure, could most likely be descendant from Native American, either the Micmac or Abenaki or any of the Algonquin national groups that's there.
Right. Well, so this is, this is your studies basically are a way of preserving history and finding people's genealogy. So it sounds like an important thing. So one thing of note that we discussed before was that at the early in your life, or at some point in your life, you did your basically your own searching to discover your own Native American background. Am I correct with that?
Yes. Yeah.
So that was a bit of a journey there as well, learning your roots and your history.
Yes. Once I started accumulating these records, then I found out I was able to help other people, and the records just started growing and growing. And so I started publication of my first book, which is the marriages between, the Indian and the French up in Canada, and some of the English would be in there too. So I just started accumulating more and more. So that's where I had a whole series of, I think in publication, I got up to 7 volumes of that type of any kind of records that show Native Americans and their history, whether it's marriage, death, census, records, things like that. And I've helped a lot of people. I don't mind bragging. And that makes me feel good.
Yeah, that's good. No, I certainly, I can see that. That makes perfect sense. And part of the reason I bring up kind of your studies and your background and that type of thing, like I referenced it seems like an attempt to understand and remember history and support history. And the reason I mention it only because in shifting gears to this, subject about Native American imagery in sports, whether it be local or at a national level, the argument seems to come as one as it being racist, derogatory, or somehow demeaning, and then the other argument from those that see it from a different point of view is more of one of respect and an attempt to preserve history. How do you feel about that? Does that make sense to you in the preservation of just Native American history?
Well, there was a lot of persecution, as history shows, with the extermination of the Native Americans and the sterilization, the eugenics program that went on in Vermont, all these different things that went on. And a lot of the Northeast Indians went underground to hide from these
Right.
atrocities. And of course, we all had bounties back in the 1700s and scalps, and Boston would pay up $100 a scalp for a warrior, or $50 or so for children or the women. So, there's a lot that drove that group underground and mixed with the
Sure.
French, which saved our lives because we were white. And
Right.
during my research, I've discovered that when trying to find others to help others find their native lines, I look for a basket maker or a snowshoe maker, or things that are coming out, that they're living the ways of some native, or the language that
Hmm.
each family has a little piece of the culture that was driven underground a long time ago. So today we're just trying to bring it back up and revive it, and that's
Sure.
what's been exciting.
No. Well, that's good. Um, I guess, like I said, in reference to the imagery and the names for sports teams and that type of thing, um, do you feel intent and the way is carried off by an organization? Does that have value? Does that have merit? I mean, as far as making the argument that in no way is this meant to be disrespectful or derogatory, or it's an attempt, I would think, to be to hold the names up in honor and respect. I mean, you don't name a sports franchise after something that people are not going to respect or see as honorable. So I guess that's my question. Can these things be honorable?
I think they can be. It's just in today's environment, when you have a red face, like in the case of the Washington Redskins, uh, or even the way the Spalding had these here, the red face, but now they're
Yeah, and
using
they
the skin color face. My own,
yes, which I thought was a much better choice.
yeah, in my own hometown, approached me in 2016, and this is their mascot, and they're the
Right.
Indians, the Amesbury Indians, and as you can see out of these pictures, there's nothing abusive about any of this or insulting, I
No.
think, uh, to the
Right.
Indian. In fact, the Amesbury one looks like a mohawk. It's traditionally from this
Right.
area too, it looks like. And
Yeah.
I had presented our point of view to the Amesbury School Commission that was thinking about eliminating the um, the mascot idol, and I have still family there and everything, so they were all on that uproar. And my dad went to that high school too when he was young, so
Sure.
it was something that really meant a lot. And I wasn't just being prejudiced about it because of my relationships to Amesbury. I honestly gave him my true feelings that there's nothing of great. That's historical pictures there, and they're historically correct, and
Right.
it's not really um, offensive. That's the way I looked at it.
Oh,
And once I
okay.
studied the case a little more, it turned out to be one, maybe two people. I'm fighting off a cat here. She's trying to jump up. Um,
good,
one,
good
one
luck
or
with
two,
that.
yeah, one or two cases that was the complaints. So the majority of the people didn't care. They were using this, and they still use it today because the whole movement was turned down after I had sent my letter. I'm hoping that my letter did some good. And I did the same thing with Spalding. I sent my letter as in support of their new image, and there's nothing wrong with the way they just pitched that the the whole
The imagery for
facial features. Everything is fine. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, my biggest thing in discussing this, and like I said, I want to be respectful. There's no reason that people shouldn't be, that we can't have a civil discussion about things. But I feel like intent and the way things are carried off, I found no evidence in all of my research from past articles and discussions about Spalding High School and the way they've conducted themselves, whether it be the faculty or the athletic teams or the student body, that was ever in any way disrespectful. And I mean, if somebody was able to scrape up some, little ragtag group of individuals, that could have done something that I missed, I think I would be upset to think that you would assign the acts of just maybe a handful to a whole community and a high school that seems to have been respectful in every way.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, you that sheet of paper, that was a Spalding student that sent that to you, wasn't it? I think she's still a student.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, here, it's Juliana Leela,
Okay.
I think it's called. Yeah, her last name is Leela, I believe.
Okay.
Nice girl, and she was very, very polite, very forward with it, and she had all the right questions to ask, and I just hope I helped her out.
No,
Now,
like I said,
another point too is the Washington Post did a study a while back, and they discovered 9 out of 10 Native Americans that were interviewed did not have a problem with mascots.
Yeah.
So
it's all in how it's presented. Certainly, if it's done in a derogatory manner and not respectful, I can understand why anybody would have an issue, and I certainly would have the same opinion.
Yeah.
So.
And I feel the same way. What I've seen and what I've been approached on have not been abusive situations, not offensive at all.
Okay. Well, that's, like I said, I was happy to discover that too, and like I said, in my research, didn't really find anything in the way of Spalding's history that was, like I said, in any way that was disrespectful. And I know I'm going to mess this up, but there was also a Comanche chief. I'm not even going to attempt the first name because I'll screw it up. I'm going to say Chief Parker of the Comanche Nation down in the Florida Panhandle, that actually historically had the affectionate name of Red Raider as well. So anybody that wants to take the time to look that up. So it's not something that hasn't been used and obviously can be used in a respectful manner. It all depends on how you conduct yourself and
it's how it's presented, because a lot of the writings that I've seen of 1800s, going way back to the 1800s, they referred to themselves as red skin,
right?
And they were called that in their own circles. So
right.
And again, it's how it's presented that can be offensive.
Right. Now, do you think? I mean, this is probably an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just to get your opinion. But do you feel like a majority of this is just the fact that it's come up again? The last time this was attempted was back in 2015, and do you think that just the present day atmosphere with all the turmoil across the country, do you think that was probably one of the main driving forces that this just happened to come back up again and make another attempt? Does that make sense to you?
I think it is the atmosphere, because there's so much minority abuse going on, and
Sure.
in all colors, the brown, black, and the red, if you want to call it red. And
Sure.
there's a lot of abuses everywhere. I mean, Native Americans have a lot of stuff to complain about,
Certainly.
more than the mascot issue. I mean, there's a lot of abuse still going on, and the reservations are just a terrible place to live. The way
Right.
it's been just they've been thrown in there, and it's been a fight for survival ever since. Just
Right.
permanently put on a welfare system in a way,
Yeah.
and you can't live that way forever. They need more
No.
independence.
Right. No. To be fair with the subject, I mean, is this something that ever comes up in tribal discussions with when you're holding council, or is it more other things that just seem to be, obviously a bit more of a priority, like you discussed, just a second ago?
Our council meetings hardly ever brings this up. And our last council meeting, because of the subject matter coming up, and then coming on to this program, we discussed it in the last meeting, and it got pretty. The communication was pretty heavy, and the meeting went a lot longer than we thought. But it was also involving Black Lives Matters. It had all these different elements that were thrown in there, and it clouds a lot of the individual issues into one big, huge complaint. And yeah, we had a very lengthy discussion on the matter, because there were a few in our tribe that against it, and some
Right.
are how I feel. That if it's not offensive, it's okay. It came up that way, but we normally don't talk about things like that. We got involved in the past, 2016, with Standing Rock and supported them and
Mm-hmm.
sent them blankets and almost $800 in support. And the only reason why I didn't even go to sit there with them is because I had some knee surgery done, and I couldn't go, but I was planning on it. So we
Sure.
give support to other situations that we feel warranted. And just recently, we've just sent $500-600 and a bunch of masks to the Navajo Nation because they need it. So we're a very giving tribe, and I'm so proud of
Yeah, I
that.
understand. Yeah, yeah, I understand. For some unexplained reason that it seems like, unfortunately, both the Indian population, Native American population in this country, and other minorities seem to be, unfortunately, somehow more targeted by this recent virus, which makes no sense to me. But it's.
I mean, in the case of the Navajo,
serving.
they don't even have water. Their wells are polluted, and they have to travel miles and miles to get buckets of water, and
Right.
they're not that good a shape over there. But that's a reservation life. I mean, we're structured a little bit different because we don't have a reservation, but we're trying to, recreate our culture and educate everybody, including the general public. We welcome all to study us.
That was one of my other questions, and just thinking this whole matter through, and perhaps providing a way that makes all of this more meaningful to people that are involved, especially when I'm talking about Spalding High School or any high school that might still have Native American imagery. Does it make sense to you that perhaps if the administration would find a way to find a little bit of Native American history and culture, and maybe add that to the understanding of their athletic teams' names, and provide that as a way, as a stronger basis to have even more pride in the school, but also of just a better understanding of where that imagery and name comes from, and why they felt it was important enough to consider for their team. Does maybe a little bit of education in that respect sound like a good idea to you?
That's one thing we talk about in our meetings is the lack of education. There's some of my elders in Vermont. They'll go into a store, and if they see the member dressed like an Indian or Indian jewelry on or something, she's actually several of them have been not attacked but verbally attacked, and said that we don't belong here. And I'm surprised this is still going on. And as recently as just yesterday, our elder over in Vermont was approached again in a grocery store, and the woman was violent with her. I mean, just yelled and screamed at her, and that's wrong. And I think it's lack of education, and that's why when we plan our powwow, we want to make sure the public comes. And when we sooner or later get land and a place for our center, the whole public is invited to come and take part in the nature walks, in the classes, the basket making, anything, just to get everybody besides our people more educated.
Yeah, that, like I said, you're very intuitive in that was going to be one of the directions that I went after the question of just education was local involvement. I know, how often do you provided we don't have a pandemic, how often do you have powwows and try to schedule things like that? And is that something we could do here in the state? And just is it all right to invite the general public so that they can, like I said, get a better understanding?
I don't know of any powwows that do not have no general public invited. It's usually it's a community thing usually, and then of course the natives are all Native Americans are all invited from all the other nations too, and they take part. I mean, I saw some beautiful regalia from Mexico, from the Mayan tribes at the Mashpee powwows. The Mashpee powwow down in the Cape Cod has a lot of internationally type of groups that come in, and they're beautiful shows, and the public loves that, and they learn a lot from it, because there are certain things that you cannot do during a powwow, like take pictures during a sacred ceremony, like the grand entry into the circle. Sure. There's certain other things that is, not respectful, wearing a hat during those ceremonies. But the MC will tell you, they'll lead the people through on what they should or should not do. And that it's all part of education. Now, affecting us, I've been trying to get a powwow going here in Alstead since last June. And because of the virus, we had to cancel. And I had 3 drum groups, and it was really put together well, I thought, and we couldn't wait to have it. And the town of 2,000 couldn't wait to have all this going on. They were excited. So I had that support too. Well, it comes now this coming Sunday. We had to reschedule. It till September because we had to cancel the June one. So now we have September on the block. Sure. Because this Sunday we're going to have to vote and most likely cancel September's and move it to June of 2021. So it's disappointing, So the virus is really in the way, and there's so many of us out there that want to go to powwows, and there isn't any.
Right. Well, certainly, if you share that information with me, I will definitely when it comes time, I will share that on my social media and websites and the like. I would love to see, honestly, I would love to see, like you said, a little bit more in the way of education and people getting more involved. And like I said, I think one thing that might go a long way from maybe not having to have these discussions, again, if in fact Spalding keeps their imagery and their name, is that that there is some form of education at the high school level. Even something that's just enough to give them maybe a background on the local Abenaki Nation and like I said, the meaning and respect that comes with what the imagery is meant to be and how we should conduct ourselves in that respect. I would really like to see that.
This is one thing that we're trying to lean on too, is to get more in the schools and make sure they know the history of what type of tribes lived in their areas and things like this, And our sub-chief, she lives in Kentucky, and she goes and brings our flag and breaks down the flag, our logo, what it means, all the sacred things that are on the flag. And then she actually goes and cooks fry bread for them right there in the classroom. And shares it. Nice. Now, fry bread came along a little bit later, but she explains about the Three Sisters garden, where you grow corn, beans, and squash together. A lot of people don't realize that's an Indian, an Abenaki way too, and I think even down in Mexico. Wow. So there's a lot of different cultural things that could be learned in school that the kids will find interesting too.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think that would be very important, and I honestly, excuse me, I think it would be well received, honestly, and like I said, I think it just goes a long way in keeping the lines of communication open at all times, so that hopefully we don't have to go through this. Unless there's something egregious out there, like I said, somebody that is actually being disrespectful. But for those that are not, if we can just all just have a discussion from time to time and be civil and go forward in knowledge and better understanding. So
now, Representative Zach Ralph in Vermont near Woodstock, he represents that area. Before he was representative, he invited me to come over to the Woodstock High School and do a lecture on the Abenaki and our history and different things like that. So me and my one of my council people, David Nephew, accompanied me, and we had a terrific time. There was the 10th grade and the 11th grade. I'm not sure if the 12th grade was there, but there was over 100 kids in there. And they loved what we had to say, and they were all interested. And it lasted. It was a whole cultural thing, and we answered questions and the whole shot. And it was over an hour or more. And the school allowed that. It was all in the library, which they used as a multi-purpose room too. And it was a great day. So things like that really helps in the schools.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think it just creates a better atmosphere and keeps the lines of communication, open. So that's something I would hope that if nothing else comes from this, that would be what gets taken here, and that, like I said, it becomes a little less confrontational and just more of a discussion on how to move forward, maybe in a better way. So.
That's what we're hoping, because our tribe is really mixed, and we have a lot of people down south. So the racial mixture is quite a bit. We even have our Cajun cousins down in New Orleans that are members,
right?
And they're related. We're all blood related. After I do their genealogies and approve them, so the Cajuns down there, they're Acadians from up here in Nova Scotia. Since 1755, when they got thrown out by the English. So, we're everywhere, and it's not like a reservation atmosphere here in the Northeast. It's
Right.
totally different. We're spread out, and the economy spreads us out because people will move out of the area for jobs and different reasons. And that's why we have now 345 members, and we're in 34 states and Canada.
Wow.
So it's quite. I had to break it down for regions. We have 8 regions totally, and it's growing every day. I got an application just tonight to check over.
Well, I hope that in maybe some small way that this podcast will maybe reach an individual that's maybe has that question, and we'll reach out to you. So
Sure. Yeah. No. One thing I do is help everybody get it. I don't charge. It costs $5 for an application, and that's just for postage and stuff like that. So we don't charge people. The groups that charge yearly fees to be a Native American or in a tribe, that there's something wrong with that. You know, you're a family, and we don't charge our family to be members.
No, that's right. No, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Well, no, I honestly, I think to this point, I think we've had a good and fair discussion. And I don't know is there anything that perhaps that you would care to say to those that maybe still feel that there's an issue with some of these names, or and not that you're trying to preach, but just an opinion and perhaps a different way of looking at it coming from your point of view. Is there anything that you'd like to say to them?
I think the times is what's making this so much bigger. And there's a lot of complaints out there. And I think because of the large amounts of people that got out and protested during this Black Lives thing, they were predominantly white. I mean, we have an uprising in the country that is trying to scream for civil rights and properly, respecting the minorities. So by this coming out, I think that our group will benefit, the Black people will benefit, and the Mexican people will benefit, or any of the Hispanics, and the Orientals, because they've been catching hell too from the government bad-mouthing them, because if they came from China or the Orient, they think they're responsible for the virus. And it's crazy out there at this point. So I think after the dust settles, I think we're going to maybe have some kind of revival of civil rights and things enacted better. That's what we're hoping for, and with peace, not violence.
Yeah. Well, we that's part of my prayers. People getting along and be able to discuss things and be civil about things and move forward in a better way. So something I pray for as well. So
yeah.
Well, I think as far as this particular discussion on this topic, I think we've kind of covered it well. I'm sure there's something I forgot that I should have mentioned that I'll think of when we're done, and which doesn't do us much good now. But
if our listeners have any questions, they're free to contact me anytime. Through you can just let them know my information and get a hold of me.
I can certainly share that on my page.
We want to bridge
that
as much as we can.
Yeah, I definitely want to bridge gaps. I don't want to create them. So that's definitely more of the direction that I would prefer to go in, and I'm hoping that there's a majority of people that feel the same way. Now, Chief Paul, as I do with all of my guests, once we get done discussing the more serious topic, I developed a little segment I call TOT, totally off topic, and I tossed this question out as a way to just kind of lighten things up and maybe end in a little bit of a different note. So if I can outline, notes. I'm all over the place here. Okay, too many papers. So let me say this first. TOT, totally off topic, is officially sponsored by my good friend Tim Roy and T. Roy Construction, 603-593-3849. If you're looking for any light commercial, residential, or utilities work to be done, Tim is the person to call. T. Roy Construction, quality and integrity from the beginning of the job to the end, and that's T. Roy Construction. And again, that number was 603-953-3849. All right, so the question, and this is usually, like I said, nothing to do with the subject, and this week's is definitely that. If money and circumstance were no issue to you right now, where would you like to travel to for, say, a 7 or 10-day little vacation? Money, no object, and no COVID, no qualms, just you can go. Where would you like to go?
Well, my younger brother and his wife just moved to Vegas, and I love Las Vegas, and I'd like to go there, but also hit Roswell, New Mexico, which is my favorite little town, mostly because of the UFO.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That's
like
my
I said. Yeah. For those of you watching this, I think honestly, at some point, I am going to convince Chief Paul to have him back on again, and not so much discussing this particular topic, but just get into a little bit more of his background and his studies and some of his travels, because honestly, very interesting man, very interesting background, and like I said, love to talk to you again. Maybe something a little lighter and not quite so heavy.
Sure.
So, all right. Well, okay. I don't think anybody wants to know where I want to travel to. I think they know I call my set here the beach. So I think they probably have a good idea what I do with 7 to 10 days if I could just take off. And that, or I always wanted to go to Scotland for some reason and check out the Highlands.
That would be nice too. Yeah. And then I have a friend in France, so there's as many places I've been, it's hard to pick it.
Right.
I haven't been to Roswell since 2009, and I'd love to drive down there again.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good time. I'll have to, if you do get down there again, I'll certainly be in touch, because I'll be interested to hear what went on. So
yeah.
Chief Paul, I'm gonna let you go and finish up the rest of this podcast. But like I said, I thank you again so much for spending some time with me and discussing this. And like I said, it's just much appreciated. So
thank you for having me. Anytime that you need anything, I'll be glad to help. It's a wonderful show.
Oh, thank you. We're working on it, so can only get better and only go up. So we'll keep working hard. So Thank you so much. You have a good rest of your evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You too.
And like I said, Chief Paul Bunnell, Abenaki Nation. Like I said, very, very pleasant gentleman, fantastic background, and like I said, and quite accomplished. And I'm just grateful that he saw fit to at least, give me a little bit of his time this evening. So I hope all of you appreciate that as well. So in closing, I always like to give you just, like I said, a little bit of food for thought. And this particular segment, and most of these come from the heart, just so you know, it's not anything written down except for a reminder of maybe what the statement of the question is. But this particular segment is called "It's Just My Opinion." And unfortunately, and I say that only because there seems to be a little bit of a reoccurring theme lately in what seems to drive this particular segment. And again, I find myself coming back to the question, can't we just talk? there seems to be an awful lot of division stirred up across the country. There's multiple reasons why, but it seems to be just way too much violence attached to all of it. And when it comes to that portion of it, I question the motivation. I question whether it's actual change that people are seeking, or more of a way to division, just a division to divide the country, and stop doing the one thing that I thought we used to do on a regular basis, and I still think we can. Is just talk, be able to discuss things without taking it to a physical level. And I know there are groups out there that feel like they've been marginalized or not considered or listened to. But I think a message of that type comes across better when you can actually sit people down and have a reasonable discussion, and not resort to the physical violence that puts people in a hospital, or destroys property, or leaves a business decimated in your own neighborhood. So, like I said, it's just a simple question, and I would love to see people consider stopping the division, and maybe pausing for a moment and trying to remember that we're better off when we discuss things, and take the time to think them over and be rational. And you never out of any emotion when it comes to some hate. Nothing ever good comes out of that. So my hope and prayer is that we can get back to having discussions as a nation and a people, and try and come together. So, and humbly as always, that's just my opinion. And hey, it's been a while. It's been a good 3 weeks since we actually had a podcast. I am working on some other things. Looking to have hopefully a representative from a local law enforcement come on the program, so I can have a discussion with him just concerning what's going on nationally now and some of the things locally, and just give hopefully people a better idea of what police officers go through on a regular basis, and the good ones, not the ones that seem to make the headlines in the paper, but the ones that are out there trying to do the job that they had taken on and trained for. So that's my hope. I will, as soon as I can put that together, I will certainly share that with all of you when a date and time when that is coming up. So until then, I will leave you with this. Please support your local small business. Also, get involved locally. Please be the change that you want to see. And as I always say, please remember this: God, freedom, and family. Because if we lose the first two, our families are doomed. So thank you once again for tuning in to the What's My Role Now podcast. Like I said, please support us, share us, and we will continue to keep striving to make this as a better program, and more topics, interesting guests, and things that will bring you back on a regular basis. So until then, God bless, and thank you so much.